Turning to the presidential race of 2020, former Vice President Joe Biden made it official this week that he's running for president. Biden joins a crowded field of Democrats. I sat down with Western New England University political science professor Tim Vercellotti and political consultant Tony Cignoli to discuss the race and what Joe Biden's decision means for the Democrats' chances of defeating President Trump.
It was probably wise to wait to come in at the end of the pack, to be the 20th rather than the first, because you have to sustain that all the way through, like Elizabeth Warren has had to do since she announced first in this large pack. It's something we've expected, but also we were all kind of wondering, is he going to do it this time? Is he going to answer the bell? How many times before has he been out and paused and hesitated? And it's not his first rodeo. This is his third. It will be interesting to see what the impact is in the next 3 or 4 days. Certainly, leading up to this, he's taken a lot of hits already from his opponents, from others, from media, who are looking at the record of Joe Biden. But I think that's going to be the big thing for Joe Biden. He's got to reintroduce himself and create a new narrative. This is who I am. This is what I've actually done. I'm the guy that wrote Megan's Law and got it passed. I'm the guy that did all these things in the United States Senate. And on top of that, I'm a Barack Obama, Joe Biden Democrat. You're already seeing him start in that regard.
And Tim, this wasn't really a surprise. We had expected Biden to get in. Do you think he picked the best moment to get in this race in the manner in which he did?
It seems so. I agree with Tony that coming in now, it sort of completes the field. His choice of subject matter for his announcement video was curious in that he was talking about Charlottesville and the white nationalist rally in 2017, and his argument that this is a fight for the soul of the nation.
Yeah.
You need to paint in broad strokes in a campaign announcement, but his real strength is on the subject of economic insecurity. Concerns that the wage gap is not closing as fast as people would like. There are worries about health care. His whole reason for being in the race is his ability to connect with white working class, white middle class voters in the Midwest. And it was curious that he didn't play to that strength in his announcement video. I'm sure that theme will be fairly prominent in his campaign, but he didn't lead with it.
Yeah. He said his first test, interestingly enough, will not be Iowa, will not be New Hampshire. His first test is going to be these first 24 hours, the day after he made the announcement, and how much money he's going to raise through that first day or so. Do you agree with that? Is it that critical, how much he raises right off the bat?
To a degree it is. How much he's able to stay in mainstream media, in alternative media, social media, that's all going to be important. We're in an age now where everything has to happen simultaneously. And I have to assume that his getting into this race now and knowing a few of his advisors, they have a general idea of what they're going to be able to raise. And I think the unique thing about Biden on the money is that he wisely will not make the same pledges that the others have. He'll take the large donations. He has to. To win the big game, it requires a lot of money. And it's great for some of the candidates to say, I'm not taking PAC money, I'm not taking the large dollar donors. In reality, you can't win unless you do. This game is so fast, these first few primaries, to get to California where there's 18 different media markets, this is going to require $20 million, somewhere in there, just to place by the time California ends.
And what about his social media savvy? It's not as good as some of the other younger candidates, right, who raise money left and right online. He's got to go through a little bit of a different avenue, doesn't he, to raise money?
Well, he used Act Blue today, which has become a very widely accepted way for Democrats to raise money. He will find that the landscape has really changed even since the re-election campaign of 2012 in terms of the use of social media, in terms of being responsive, and the 24-hour news cycle is almost a 60-minute news cycle these days. So his campaign is going to have to be a lot more nimble than he might be accustomed to.
Tim, you've done a lot of polls at Western New England University. You follow the polls very closely. What do the polls, or what are they saying about Joe Biden's chances in this race, in the Democratic field, first of all, to get the nomination, secondly, against President Trump in a general election?
Depending on the state, depending on the poll, he's either one or two, trading spots with Bernie Sanders. There's an enormous amount of goodwill for Joe Biden among Democratic primary voters. Now that he's in the race, though, he may experience what we've seen in previous cycles. Think about Hillary Clinton and her commanding presence in the polls in 2008 and how In Iowa, she did not do what was expected of her, and all of a sudden the race got scrambled. Once you're in, once it's competitive, you can't take anything for granted. So he's got to be ready. He's got to be prepared to fight to hold that spot.
And I've read where when you look at the power rankings, so to speak, of the Democratic candidates, the number one candidate for many right now is not Joe Biden, but Bernie Sanders, because of his organization that he built up when he ran in 2016 and his ability to raise money, through social media. Do you feel Sanders might be number one at this point in terms of where the race stands?
I think as far as the activists are concerned, as far as those who are making some early commitments, he certainly started this with boots on the ground everywhere. The million emails that the campaign touted, all that money they raised in the first 24 hours. He's got that. He's a spoiler in this race. Can he win ultimately? Most pundits, most players, most political scientists would say no. But right now, he's got a commanding presence in this campaign. And he's tied up all the workers in a lot of key places. What's interesting is to see Massachusetts, the home of Elizabeth Warren. Certainly she's in the hunt here. But when you look at some of the polling that we see here right now, Bernie rules the roost to a great degree. Certainly she's in the top three. And all of a sudden we're seeing Mayor Pete enter into that top three as well. So there's so many factors to this piece right now, Ray. But the key piece is what you've both touched on, the money. Can he continue to raise that kind of money? Will this money be there for the Democratic nominee ultimately when that person comes out of Milwaukee as the player, the one for the Democrats? Will that money still come? Bernie's going to be a player in this. He's going to be a kingmaker or a queenmaker, if not the nominee.
And Joe Biden, what do you think his biggest challenge is going to be? He certainly isn't taking the nomination for granted. No. That's a tough field. There's 20 candidates he's got to fight his way through. But what's his biggest challenge in getting to the nomination at this point, do you feel?
It seems as if the Democratic primary electorate wants to swoon in this cycle. They want to fall in love with a candidate. Yeah. And if you look at Pete Buttigieg's rise through the polls nationally, you see an electorate that's restless, that wants someone new, someone fresh. And Joe Biden is reliable, a party standard bearer for many, many years. Can he kindle that sort of passion among the voters? That's a big question right now. The field is so wide open, and you've got the most diverse field that the Democrats have ever had in terms of race, in terms of gender, in terms of sexual orientation. Where does a white man in his late 70s fit into all that? That's the big challenge.
Good point, Tim. And Tony, Joe Biden's 76 years old. He's been in politics for 45 years. Is this his time, or has his time come and gone politically? We look at that Democratic field, more diverse, it's younger. Biden is 76 years old, so is the time right for him, or perhaps is it a little too late?
It's a challenge, but I don't think it's a definitive, massive block from him to getting where he wants to go here. Joe has got to reintroduce himself. He's got to say, I'm Joe Biden. I'm the guy that got Megan's Law passed in the United States Senate. I did that. Some of his best ads were when he was running for re-election to the Senate after the '88 failed presidential and after coming back from a brain tumor. And everyone wondered, can he pick himself up to do this? You look at his ads then. There was one that just rolled out achievement after achievement after achievement. There were over 106 in a 60-minute commercial. And these are things that he really did. Certainly, that's old. And everybody now wants change. It's always change. We went from change candidate Obama to change candidate Trump. Can Joe Biden, with his stability, with his solid rock concept of Uncle Joe, the guy that you can count on, will that play in America? Maybe it's possible. But Joe Biden's going to be Joe Biden. The headaches he's going to have, or the foibles or the mistakes that he may make, he's going to make them. He's done it in every campaign. And the flip side of that, though, can he reintroduce himself and reconnect with an America and win Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan?
And these allegations that he made some women uncomfortable, with these encounters, is that going to play a factor at all in this primary season and this campaign as it moves along, or is Biden getting past that right now?
His reaction to it seemed a little bit tin-eared. He seemed contrite, but then at some point made some self-deprecating remarks about it as well that suggested he might not have been taking it as seriously as he should have. And again, the politics are changing so rapidly these days, and younger voters, women voters, they want candidates who are paying attention, who are sensitive to these issues. #MeToo was nowhere in the landscape the last time Joe Biden ran for office. It's out there now, and my hope is he's got savvy folks around him, men and especially women, who can keep him on track.
I don't know if you agree this. Many still feel Joe Biden is the Democrats' best chance to beat Donald Trump. Is it too early to make that kind of conclusion politically, or do you feel it is the truth right now in terms of Democratic chances?
It's good for him that some people believe that. If he can take that perception and turn it into reality, that's the key. But right now it is too early because you've got phenomenal campaigns being run by some of the others. The heavily led and policy-oriented campaign of an Elizabeth Warren. Wow. To the opposite of that, the incredible campaign of Pete Buttigieg. You know, he is connecting. It's Bobby Kennedy-like almost. You know, people do want to swoon over a candidate. But one of the things that could help Joe Biden, we all love the comeback story. We all love the Rocky story. We all love the last Rocky story, Balboa, stepping back into the ring at 60 years old, you know? There's a thing to that. And if he can portray himself as, I get it, there needs to be change. But I've done this. I've walked this walk. I've been in the position as vice president. I can make this happen, and I'll do it for a limited time. At some point, maybe the thing that helps him, it's one term. It's one term. And look at who my vice presidential nominee is.